Thank you. So I have questions about mismatched libido. My husband and I have been together for about 10 years, and I feel sexual usually about once a month, and I think he feels sexual all the time.
Right.
And especially it's been hard because I have 2 young children, and so I haven't been ovulating or been in a cycle, which I think is usually coincides with when I get horny.
Sure.
And, you know, I'm an atheist myself, but a lot of my friends are religious, and I hear a lot about, you know, well, the wife is supposed to, you know, service her husband basically and provide for him sexually.
Nope.
And so I'm kind of...
his libido is not your responsibility. But continue.
Well, that's kind of where I'm at is, you know, that, and I feel like society says, well, you know, that's why the husband goes out and cheats because, you know, he's not being satisfied at home. So that's where I'm at. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think my first question for you is similar to actually the question that I asked Kevin, which was, to what extent are you committed to a monogamous relationship? And is changing that dynamic an option for you?
I think I'm much more open because I'm also bisexual. And so, you know, that's something in previous relationships where I have included another female in the relationship. But at the same time, it feels so different because this is like my husband who I see in a different light. And I feel like I would be so jealous to have someone else involved.
Yeah, and again, you know, not to just keep repeating ourselves, but there are degrees to monogamy. So I don't know what kind of understanding y'all have, or if there even is an explicit conversation or an explicit understanding of what is and is not acceptable in terms of, you know, pornography and masturbation and these other things. But yeah, it is a question of, you know, are you looking to change how monogamous the relationship is? Are you looking to change your libido, which is potentially possible? It's not your responsibility. It's not anything that you need to do, but it is something that if you're wanting to do, you might consider, and there are ways of looking at that. And then beyond that, recognizing that life is full of imperfections. And I know that it feels like such a brush off of an answer, but it is very possible for him to simply have less partnered sex than he would maybe want to have. And that's an okay way to go about life. So there are kind of 3 different, you know, takes that you can really look at it from.
Well, I feel like I do want to increase my libido because I feel like he has been gracious in our relationship so far. You know, he's never pushed me to do anything that I didn't want to do. But at the same time, then I'm also a sexual assault survivor. And so, you know, it's trying to figure out where that line is in myself of what I'm willing to do because, you know, maybe I don't feel like having sex, but I want to rally for him. But then, you know, where's that line between because I want to do it or because I feel obligated to do it?
Right.
Yeah, and I think it's very important to point out that there's a difference between changing how often you have sex and changing your libido. And you're not obligated to change either. But it is possible, you know, we can't necessarily like completely rebuild our libidos, but there is some elasticity there. There is some opportunity to potentially talk to a doctor and investigate different things that might be hampering it. Perhaps it's medications that you're on, perhaps it's hormonal imbalances, perhaps it's diet and exercise and all of these different things that can affect it.
You're a mother.
Yeah.
Your mother.
So that's a huge factor.
That can definitely, again, looking at some of the dynamics of your relationship, looking at some of the dynamics of the relationship and, who kind of is doing what in the home, how much of certain levels of the workload may be on one partner versus another. Those things can impact, just how much energy a person can have, and even how you at times may view each other. So sometimes that can be a thing to look at, especially for parents.
Yeah, not just the physical component, not just the mental, emotional component, but also the relationship component. So those are all things that may be adjustable and that may affect your libido. But I again want to stress that if that's your goal, great. That is not mandatory goal by any means. You are perfectly welcome to be 100% asexual and celibate if that's who you are or if that's who you choose to be.
Or sex once a month. It's really your body, it's your adventure, and I hear what you're saying in terms of being a survivor, and thank you for trusting this space to share that. Being a survivor, there are a lot of other levels and layers that you have to consider, and that also your partner will need to consider in terms of approaching sex and intimacy and touch, all of those things. So being really patient with yourself, with each other, and finding different ways to communicate and also explore intimacy in different ways, not necessarily just about maybe penetrative sex, but other ways that you can explore touch, intimacy, closeness, those things that you love and enjoy about each other that can build towards those other moments of sex, if that's what you're looking for, is like penetrative or other forms of sex.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, there's no magic pill that that's going to, make everything perfect. It's a spectrum of options.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, thank you very much for that. I appreciate those words.
Of course.
Yeah, I think before we wrap up at all, it's just important to say one more time that this may be a moment in your life. It may be a season that passes. I mean, very much it seems that motherhood is a big part of what you're experiencing. And, it's possible that this is a season that will pass on its own and that it's okay to just enjoy it for what it is. Maybe to make some slight changes, like Melissa said, in the way you look at sex, so that sex doesn't just have to be, intercourse. It can be a lot of other things, so that you're both getting your needs met in ways that feel acceptable. And maybe you do want to make some drastic changes to the way you live your life or to how you see your sexuality. But maybe those changes will come on their own, even if, right now feels a little bit different than you would maybe want it to, or maybe the way he wants it to. And I think it's important to keep those things separate in your mind.
Yeah, I think that we will have a good talk, because I do like that point about, it's not just penetrative sex. And I feel like I probably withhold a lot of other types of intimacy and touch and hugging because I don't want to feel like I'm leading him on.
Yeah.
But I would love to just crawl into bed and snuggle. But it feels like when I do crawl into bed and snuggle, he starts humping me. And then I'm like, oh, I've been breastfeeding and taking care of a toddler, all day long. I really don't want that kind of touch. I just want to lay here and go to bed.
Yeah, and a kiss is only a promise of a kiss. Cuddling is only a promise of cuddling. He may interpret some of these things one way or the other, and, that's natural and not unreasonable, but you can also very explicitly discuss these things and say, hey, I would really like to offer this, or I would really like to do this, but not necessarily that. And that's all right. And I guess also to just expand that that repertoire. So many couples feel uncomfortable with things like mutual masturbation or anything that isn't, you know, explicitly intercourse, and recognizing that sex can look like a lot of different things. Finally, I would say that I think that a lot of guys would feel a lot differently about sex if every time they had sex, they themselves were penetrated. And that's not to say that women don't enjoy vaginal intercourse or that, you know, that's not a thing that anybody would want, because clearly, of course, it is. But it's exhausting in a way that I don't think a lot of straight men necessarily realize.
Well, and that's, you know, for folks that have vulvas and vaginas, you know, it's usually the clitoral stimulation where orgasm, you know, and the most pleasure happens. And that's often not what is happening without effort through simple penetration of the vagina. So yeah, it's a lot of exploring. It's a lot of exploring your own, you know, body and your own comforts around different types of touch. For me, for example, I really like nipple stimulation. That's that's information. But I like nipple play, right? But I think it's important that you're talking with your partner about how it makes you feel when, right? So how it makes you feel when he may give you a kiss and expect more. What does that feel like to you? And being able to talk about that in at a time when the guard is down. Maybe not in the moment when that's happening, but say, I would really love to be able to crawl into bed and cuddle with you because that really makes me feel good. But I need to be able to feel comfortable to set that boundary and to say, but I'm not wanting more right now. And so opening up those lines of communication where you can set those boundaries and you can see that he's respecting that sounds like it's really important to you, and rightfully so. So he needs to understand that through talking it out.
Yeah, it sounds so easy, but boy, talking is hard.
It is hard. It is.
Especially when you're already feeling exhausted, when there's probably already been some heavy sighing, some frustration, this whole thing can start to feel like a real drudgery, which is unfortunate because it's not anything that any of us, we can call it a need, and I feel comfortable calling sex a need, but it's something that really brings pleasure. It is something that you can survive without as an individual. And so it's a shame that so often it feels like an obligation rather than an opportunity. So I understand that it's difficult to change that narrative, but I guess I would encourage you to remember that sex is very much meant to be something that's pleasurable, that's enjoyable, that is building connection rather than creating hostility and discomfort.
I hope.
Yeah, thank you.
I hope that helps you out, DJ.
Yes, thank you so much. And I love this program. I was so excited when I saw you guys on YouTube.
Hey, well, glad to hear it. We really appreciate you calling in and for watching.
Can I also...
Thank you.
Are you a reader at all? Do you like books at all?
Yes, yeah.
I have a book recommendation.
Yeah.
So the book Come As You Are, C-O-M-E.
Oh, okay. That's an important distinction.
Yes.
Come As You Are by Emily Nagoski. That is just the what's the right word, right? Like that's the pillar of, great books around sexuality, especially for folks that have vulvas and vaginas. So I would highly recommend that. If your library has it or a bookstore, Amazon definitely has it. But sometimes it can be great to, again, connect yourself to some support and around these topics so that you know that you're not alone. There's nothing weird, bad, or wrong with what you're experiencing.
And I'll make sure to throw a link to that in the show notes in the comment section of this episode.
Thank you so much. I will definitely be reading that tonight.
Thank you, and thank you for your call.
Thanks.
So I know that is an issue that many people have, the mismatched libidos.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
I hope that